So again, it helps with getting that data and making sure that what you believe is actually the truth. So again, it compares two versions of a single variable, typically by testing a subject's response to variant A and against variant B. So basically, subjects here represents your user that you have, and determining which of the two variants effective here represents which of the two is better, right? Variant A or B against a particular goal that we have in mind. So a very simple example would be here. So suppose we already have existing version of our website, a dummy website, okay. And tomorrow we feel like, okay, there needs to be some improvement, or we want to, improve on the user experience or maybe the appearance of our website. So we come up with an alternate experience, alternate layout for our website, say the second option. And then we would have some metric or some goal in our mind. Okay, so the first goal that I have here is maybe I have changed basically the button. So I want to have an increase in the click-through rate, or I want to have a higher CTR. So again, then in this case, right, you will run an A/B experiment and then try and prove your point or gather data to back your intuition. So maybe if you have 100 users, right, you will show 50 users to this base and then 50 users to this base. And then based on that, you will calculate which of the two buckets have higher click-through rate. Again, you can do the maths based on this, right? So similarly, it's kind of similar. The feature can be range from a very small feature to really complex ones. And I think that's how you try and validate it using A/B test. Now, there comes another important question, right? Why do we need it? Okay, like what's wrong with this idea? I see this page looks better and it will have a better experience for the user, right? But again, that's just a guesswork, right? Or there is a personal biasness in it. Like, okay, it appears better for you, but what does our user set have to say about it, right? We don't know, or we don't have the data to prove it, right? So again, it takes the guesswork out of our website or app optimizations, and the conversation shifts from from a set of people who own the product or who build the product to thinking something to actually knowing something, right? There can be a conversation like, I believe this will perform better, but you don't have the data, right? So that's what A/B tests are used for, so that you can say, okay, I don't think this, I actually have some backing data to prove this, that the second alternate version that I have, right, is actually outperforming the existing one. So again, by measuring the impact that changes have on our metrics, we ensure, and again, if you do it for every single feature that you roll out, right? Like for every feature, if you do this, you will finally have a product which is optimal out of all the set of features that you ever wanted to introduce. If you A/B test all those features, you will have a version of the product which is optimal based on all the features that you have. So this is what, understand your data, then test an alternate to the experience, to the existing experience, and then whichever is the winner, implement that and make it live for all the users. So, okay, this was a little bit background. Sorry. This was a little bit of background on what A/B experiment is and why is it needed. Let's try and cover the interesting part, right? How we do it at Myntra, how it's actually achieved at Myntra. So to start with, right, we use it extensively for almost all the features that we roll out. For example, from something as small as checking the email template, right? When SEM team or any other team feels like sending out a communication, they actually A/B test it as to which of the formats of the email or which of the email templates, right, performs the best, like have more user attention or is more appealing to the user. To bigger features, like we recently rolled out selective checkout before URS, wherein out of you have a set of items in your checkout and you want to select just a few of the items, then you don't have to remove the rest of the items or move it to wish list. You can simply select those items and then move to checkout part. So this was also A/B tested. So again, the point being, we A/B test for almost all the features, be it small or large. So two services help us actually achieve this at Myntra. So first one is Chameleon. This is basically responsible for experiment creation and bucket allocation part. So when you say I want to run an experiment, right, you'd have a user set in mind. One obvious user set is your entire user base, but there would be, app constraints, like, some feature can be made live on only some of the apps, or, greater than app versions, or there can be other constraints like this. So you would want the capability to create experiments on different level of cuts, and you'd want to configure your experiments as per your needs, right? So a basic example can be like we just saw, right? There was the color of the button. Maybe you think there are more than one competitors rather than just green, right? I want to have an analysis of, say, red button as well. So again, creating of those experiments, how you want to create those experiments, for which users, what are your buckets, and what are your cuts, right? Like a app version or website, you want to run it on app or, website, and all those kind of cuts are available in Chameleon. And then again, that's the creation part. Now comes the bucket allocation part. So making sure actually that whatever you have decided, right, whatever buckets you have created, there should be allocation as per those buckets. So suppose you have created 3 buckets, A, B, C, and you want equal distribution in all the 3 buckets, right? So Chameleon will make sure that, A has 33 users, B has 33 users, and C has 33 users, roughly. So your entire set of user base for that experiment, right, will be equally divided in those buckets, and that responsibility lies with Chameleon. Then there is a second part which takes care of reporting and analyzing the experiment. Like, okay, I have run the experiment, users have used these features or have experienced this feature. Now I want to measure how was their response to, both the our existing feature and the alternate feature that we built and A/B tested. Okay. So I'll be covering the Chameleon part, and later down the line, right, Gopal will try and cover how Morpheus works and the internals of it. So moving on with Chameleon, right? So again, as I've already covered this part, it's responsible for experiment creation and bucket allocation. Again, you can create experiments on apps, and inside apps, you have cuts like Android or iOS. Inside Android and iOS, you have OS and version level cuts. Again, in website, you can say whether website or M-site where I want to run my particular experiment. And there's one more concept of segments, wherein you can say, okay, I want to run the experiment on a particular segment of user. Segment here basically represents a particular group of users, say people living in Bangalore between age group of 25 to 45 or above 45, whatever be that group. So you can configure something like that as well. Again, this allocation is purely random, and we uses murmur hash on UID and experiment ID to generate idempotent buckets. So again, the idea is, right, once you generated a bucket for a user, right, it should remain the same. You don't want it to change, because based on that bucket, the experience of the user will be. And it's not a good user experience to change, something. Like once you have presented the user with an experience, stick to it. And he should be able to see the same experience throughout his journey during the experiment. And again, so this will come slightly late once you have concluded, your experiment. Like once you have run the experiment and you have data in Morpheus, right, and you validated, okay, I want to go ahead with this feature, or I want to roll out this feature. So we have rollout experiments to incrementally roll out those features. Now, why would we want to incrementally roll out, right? So again, right, so suppose you built a feature, right, and it's not always a good idea to roll out a feature to all your user base. So suppose there was a bug in it or something else, there can be a couple of things which can go wrong, right? So you want to, be cautious while you're rolling out, and maybe roll out to a percentage of user. And then if you feel, okay, everything is going fine, then you incrementally roll out to users. So this also is achieved via Chameleon. Okay, so here I have tried and captured a simple example, okay, of what what we try and achieve by A/B experiment. So what you see on left is one experience of add new address. Okay, so this is, say that this was existing, and I think this exists for now for all the user base. And we believe that this will, improve the experience of the user. So there is an alternate, page, same page, and we have an alternate experience when you provide use my location option, and you provide ask for, access to the location of the user. And based on, so there are two, layout of the same page and two different experiences. Now this is being controlled by what you see, checkout.address.suggestion, right? Based on this bucket, this feature is being controlled. So for this experiment, right, if the bucket is enabled, you will see something like this. If the bucket is disabled, you will see something like this. So this is how it is. And similar, this goes to for all the lists that you have, right? They all would be helping in achieving something similar here that we have. It can be, multiple things, like starting from something simple as the color of the button, or to something like what we currently see in this page. I think, does that make sense? Are you guys with me? Do you have any doubts?
Yeah, sort of. This is, I think we're good for now. Next, I think you're covering the architecture, right?
Yeah.
Let's cover that first, then we'll take up question Q&A.
Okay, so I think till this part you are there with me. Okay, so let's move on to the architecture part, like how this chameleon actually works. So there are four components actually. So this is the UI part. So I was talking about, right, experiment creation, that you go ahead and create an experiment and you define all these cuts that you have. For example, filters, right? iOS or OS bundle level filters, and then you have segments as well. Then there are runtimes. I think this was there when Myntra and Jabong both were combined. We had tenants like Myntra or Jabong. Those filters were also there. So based on all these filters, right, you define an experiment here. Okay, so this part takes care of the experiment creation, and this data goes and sits in MongoDB in our database. Now comes the second part here. App, we have app or browser, and in some cases for email and notifications, right? Backend teams also use it. So from app, right, whenever a user launches the app comes to, the call comes to gateway, okay? And we have a Chameleon SDK sitting in gateway. From there, we get a call to Chameleon. Now, what this call will actually represent, we will have some identifier of the user, be it device ID, be it UIDX, or any other identifier which uniquely identifies the user, that will come to Chameleon. And we will have other meta information, right? For example, which app, whether it's an iPhone or whether it's an Android or which app version it is, metadata, like information about the user that we have. Now, what will happen for this UID, right? We will try and fetch, first of all, for these metadata that we have for the user, right? We'll try and fetch all the experiments for which this user is applicable. So say, suppose the user was an Android user, okay? So I'll try and figure out, fetch all the experiments which are running for Android. And maybe if there was a version as well, so all those cuts we will do, we will filter all the active experiments for which the user can be a part of. And once that is done, right, there is a concept of slotting as well. So as of now, you can run A/B experiments on 90% of your entire user base. It's not 100%. So we want to keep some users who are not part of A/B experiments at all. So then the slotting comes in. So basically, for every user, there is a one-time slot generation. And based on that slot value, right, we decide if it falls in that 90% of the total user base. Now, if the user has some set of running experiments for which he is applicable, and then we have a slot for which we can assign a bucket, then we go ahead and assign the bucket to that user. So basically, say suppose there are 100 experiments running, right? Out of those 100, user is applicable for that Android cut, right? And app version level cuts, say 50 experiments are applicable to be running on that device. So we have 50 experiments, and if slotting does not say that, okay, this user, we can't run experiments on this user, then we'll say, okay, for all those 50, we will assign a bucket and then respond back to this app. Now this app will cache the response for 15 minutes, what we just saw here, right? So this is cached in app, and this is my screenshot only. And I think those who know of Geekstat, right, can go and see this field should be their A/B test. And there you can see which all experiments are running for you and what bucket you currently fall into. So again, this data goes back to app. And there is again some logic based on, an experiment's bucket value. You decide, okay, which variant to show. So app has this logic that whether he will be shown this page or this page. I think similarly it happens for browser as well. They use cache to, cache. I think there is mix AB something or /_AB, some cache key name, and they cache the data with themselves. Again, the same thing will happen. The call will come via JavaScript SDK to Chameleon, and the bucket allocation will happen. Now, again, we touched upon this a bit earlier, right? That you can run segmented experiment as well. So for this, we make a call to Rashi as well. That, okay, if this user, so again, if I've said, right, this experiment can run on a particular bucket only. So you'd want to make sure, okay, if the user is part of that bucket, then only I assign him a bucket. So we make a small call to Rashi here as well. And okay, so this part allocation happened, all the features he was able to see. Now this data needs to be communicated to Morpheus, where all the analytics will happen and all the processing will happen to make sure whether to measure the behavior or to generate those metrics, right? So for that part, we push an event to Airbus, and then from Airbus to a BI HTTP endpoint, which I think dumps the data to Morpheus Kafka. Again, we use Redis to not to bombard the user, right? So again, there can be, this call will come every 15 minutes, but bucket allocation, once it has happened for a user, right? It's not going to change because we are, using consistent hash, and it's not expected to change. So it does not make sense to always publish this data. Maybe on new bucket assignments only, right? We'll publish this data. To keep whether we have already sent this data or not to Morpheus, we use Redis share as well. So I think, yeah, this is creation. This is how user interacts with it. This is what Chameleon does. And once we have dumped the data to Morpheus, right, I think BI's job kicks in, which I think Gopal will try and cover. So over to you. If you have any questions, I would love to answer. Otherwise, we can move ahead with Gopal's presentation.
No, we'll take the questions at the end. I think half of the part is covered, audience. It's like, how do we create experiment? That's Chameleon. Now, how do we conclude? How do we decide statistical significance and data-driven decisions? That's part of the Morpheus. So let's cover that also, and then we'll take the questions at the end. In between, you can type in the chat. That's fine.
Yeah. Over to you, Gopal. So I'll stop presenting.
Because it's already 4:22. Let's cover that first.
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh. I'm presenting my screen. Yeah, you guys are able to see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So basically, I will cover the Morpheus, where we do the experiment decisions, like based on the reporting side or like a significant side. So first part is, so suppose that like a metrics, like the Saurabh was explaining, like click rate. Similarly, like a revenue per user, conversions, or like how many like a login, logout, like those type of like we are supporting around 60+ metrics currently. And in case of revenue, right, RPU, just the simple formula, like a summation of revenue and divide by the distinct user participated for that experiment, and definitely group by the buckets or like a variants which has been allocated. So that's the concept. That's the formula. And but like the data, how we get, so data came from our click stream events, or like so in the term of the data set, right, we say the sessions or like fact core items or like a fact returns information. So based on that, we do the crunching and we try to pre-calculate all the information, and so that like we directly can fetch the information from our data sources instead of calculating again and again. And another thing is that we do the hypothesis testing. So basically how we know that our like how we can reject our null hypothesis, otherwise like how our alternate hypothesis is better with respect to null hypothesis. So regarding this, we are taking help with the data science team, and currently we are using Bayesian approach, but that's not the right approach. Like that's not helping us to take the decision. And we are working with the Rishikesh and Pankaj Agarwal team to get the two-part test in for the Morpheus for this hypothesis testing, and to take the better decision for the Myntra product managers. Another thing is the bucket assignment. And yeah, so last quarter I think we have observed issue with the bucket switching. So as Saurabh explained, we take care about the bucket allocation. The problem came when suppose that one user has been allocated in two bucket. So then there is like we can't take the decision of the like yeah, this guy is generating revenue for particular bucket, and again same guy is generating revenue in another bucket. So our all the hypothesis or like the decision making capability will be, we can like lose the decision based on the right way. So again, so what we did, we do the alerting now, and like that has been fixed, but again we implemented this to just alert to the user or owner of the experiment, and so that we know prior of that. And one is the data processing pipeline, where we crunch the data from the ClickStream events, like try to get the granular level data to the aggregated level, so that we need to just run a simple queries in our database to get the metrics information. So this is the architecture. So there are multiple components. So one is the like Morpheus UI, where we do the experiment creation, and this information communicated to the Chameleon for the metadata. And for the Personify, we have integration for the just knowing the segments. If a product manager want to create an experiment with the segment basis. And Morpheus backend is currently in the UDP part, and here we manage the metadata. So basically, what is the formula for that particular matrix, or like what is the how we build the query building and the caching logic of the someone already loaded the dashboard for that particular data, and so we cache that data so that we do not to again run the query, because Morpheus support till started data, is not the till today. So yeah, that's the another thing. At the data source level, we use Redis, MySQL, and MemSQL to Redis for the caching in the dashboard part, and MySQL for the metadata information, and MemSQL we are storing our data at the like where we can know the what is the revenue. We store the like column level data like revenue, clicks, all the information, and we apply the formulas there. And yeah, once Chameleon team publish this bucket assignment data, basically we get the information like it for this particular experiment. This is the bucket, this is the user ID, and this is the like OS. So like we get like those type of information. Based on that information, what we do, we try to do the joins, or like we try to do the combination with the sessions data, like ClickStream events what we are getting, and with the fact core item again, like where revenue related informations are there, or fact returns related informations are there, right? And based on that, we generate one final table and we push to the MemSQL. Another thing is we do the one significance calculation. So this is a part of this pipeline only. So where we do the hypothesis test. Currently it's in the basic, we are using Bayesian approach, but like in the next, maybe this quarter, we are planning, we are moving towards the two-part testing with help of the data science team. And once this job completion, we send to the notification to the user, and we clear the cache and all, so that we can see the refreshed report. So this is the dashboard, one sample I've taken. So basically here we show that like for this particular experiment, this is the sample size we have hit, or like we have reached, and these are the like revenue per user value, and this is the delta. Yeah, so here suppose that variant A, so variant A is here controlled, like our like a null hypothesis we can say, or like the previous version of our feature, and this is the variant B where we are looking for the new experience. So here we can see that this is delta is positive. It means yeah, our approach, the way we are thinking is right in that direction. Only the thing is significance is not like up to the mark. So again, this is an active experiment that has taken the sample. So maybe once we reach the sample, so that time the right sample, then significance will be improved accordingly, and then product manager can take the decision. But again, this is very short term to take the decision for the any experiment at the specific layer. And we split the data at the date level also, so that if any anomaly happen or like any some random fraud type of things happen, like at the user level, so we can track that and we can take the decision based on that. Yeah, another thing is significance, where when we got the data right here, so we know that revenue per user came and data is positive. It means our the alternate hypothesis is winning, or like our alternate experience is winning, right? But again, that data may not be significant based on our statistical thought process, right? So here significance help us to deep dive more, like how we can go to the user level and see the distribution for that particular hypothesis. So it measure how likely it would be the observed what we observe, assuming the null hypothesis true. So yeah, here basic point is we need to assume that our null hypothesis, what previous version we have, that should be corrected. Then only we take the decision for the alternate hypothesis. Yeah, so here one term came p-value basically. So which is assuming that null hypothesis is correct, then it's a probability or conditional probability, basically conditional probability of the alternate hypothesis with respect to the null hypothesis. And this value is very critical actually. So when this value is your, like if high p value we get, your data are likely with the true null, or it means like we are going towards the null hypothesis only, our alternate hypothesis is not winning. In case of the low p values, your data is unlikely with the true null hypothesis. It means, yeah, we are in the right direction in case of the new experience. Yeah, in the production scenario, or like in Myntra or other tech, we use the 95% of significance, and that is equivalent to the 0.05%, 0.05 p value, which is like considered as a type 1 error. So yeah, type 1 error is nothing but just like we say based on the some noise or system in the system, we observe that and we try to avoid that much. And again, depend on the use cases, or sometimes some certain system broken, so we can increase our p value also, like we can put the threshold to the 1 instead of 0.05, we can put 0.10. so that's depend on the our like again product manager side. Another thing is this is the visual representation of that. So here we can say that like standard expectation is 95% significance threshold, but like we take the decision if we are crossing that, and the p value should be less with respect to in term of the here. So here when we are saying the threshold of 95%, it means p value should be 0.05%. And if we are getting 0.03, then it means, yeah, we are moving to the right direction and we can do the production changes. But when our p value is greater than this threshold, then it means we are moving to more the type 1 error, and that is not the right hypothesis to roll out to the production. We should spend some time to again optimize our alternate hypothesis. Yeah, so this is the one thing. Now, yeah, there are again multiple approach, like I told. So we are using Bayesian approach, but data science came up with the like we can use two-part test better with respect to this, and like there are t-test and jet also. There are multiple way to do this. So we are planning to use the two-part test for this. Yeah, limitations. Yeah, again, so when everyone thinks about the A/B test, right? So we should keep in mind that this is a incremental change, or like incremental improvement of any if you are doing any A/B test. So suppose that you are running your experiment on the app as homepage. So we can, like, if platform is stable and things are fine and user are already able to use that experience, right? Then if we are introducing new features, suppose we are changing the color or we are coming with the font size, so in that term, A/B test will help us. But if suppose that you are just coming with the new page itself and trying to take the decision on that, so that this A/B test won't help, because this is like a drastical, you are designing your systems, right? So this is not for the A/B experiment. That is like A/B experiment came in the picture when we are trying to improve your experiments or like a platform in the incremental way. Another thing is the region. So main problem came. So suppose that we run the experiment and we thought that our hypothesis is correct, alternate hypothesis, but we are not getting the correct significance or matrix result. So we should spend we should not be in the hurry mode, like yeah, why it is not happening and all. We should do some like a user level survey, or like based on some analyst help to get the like yeah, what is the reason behind this, like why our performance significance is not good for this particular experiment, right? So yeah, another thing is we should not be hurried that our experiment is not our like hypothesis is not winning. So again, this is an incremental improvement, right? So it's fine to not the win always, right? But we get the idea that yeah, what we are thinking is not correct, let's do what we have currently. So this for like again it's helpful. Again, another thing is the solving right problem. So A/B test again won't help us to know that where we should run the experiment, right? So basically we so suppose that our like a payment page and another is a home page. At home page we are running the experiment and we are able to do the incremental changes based on our metrics or significance. But in case of the payment and payment page has been like some issue on the earlier itself, there's no like stable page. So if you are running experiment on that places, so there are a lot of bias came and we can't do the right significance, and we can't take the decision based on that data also. So this is again one thing. Another thing is the size, sample size. So when we are talking about the Myntra or like other tech companies, right? So they have a huge amount of traffic. So the main basic idea of the A/B experiment, we have to hit the size first, sample size. That's very critical, and the significance of the experiment. So that's the very critical, because this is not the place where we just we are seeing the revenue is greater than with respect to this. So okay, we are good to do the production deployment. No, we have to take the decision based on some like thresholds, right? Currently we don't have that capability, but we are product manager use optimizely, I think, for that to do the sizing part. Yeah, that's it from my side currently.